You're listening to the Fanmarillion, an unofficial companion podcast for the Amazon Prime series The Rings of Power. I'm your host, Glorfindoll, reacting to the show each week and haunting the Barrow Downs like the fucking wraith that I am. It's release week. Our long wait has ended, people, and we have rings. Where were you when The Rings of Power came out? I was at one of the Amazon-sponsored fan screenings one day early, which was a perfect one-time experience, and I'm also looking forward to watching the rest of the show not in a theater, with home comforts like bathroom breaks, refillable drinks, and subtitles. Oh my God, listen, I don't speak, I have no idea what you're saying, Cockney mumblepot. But how was it, you ask? I rate this first episode as a steady 2 glasses of wine. That's not bad. That's not 5 glasses. As a showrunner, you never want to reach 5 glasses. I'll say right off the bat that I was very pleased with a lot of what I saw. But I needed more than 1 glass of wine before the episode was over. So here's my launch speech. Let's get it out of the way right up front. Do I have gripes? Yes, plenty. And I'm going to describe them any chance I get on this podcast, because that's part of what we're doing here. But I want to say up front that what I watched was first and foremost accessible to a casual viewer, fun for everyone, open and welcoming to new audiences. Last episode, that's what I said they should do, and that's what they did. With that choice will naturally come trade-offs. I think everyone else expected that too. Through that lens, I mostly loved what I saw. The 2 glasses of wine were for a clunky launch out of the lore and the awkward sidestepping they had to do around Silmarillion characters and events to get to the Second Age of Middle-earth, which is where this season takes place. So I anticipate with that burden out of the way, the rest of the season has a real shot at being a great fucking time for everyone. I am so happy to be back in Middle-earth, and I think this show will only get better. It used to be that first episodes didn't carry much weight, or even first seasons. How many Star Trek fans do you know who explain away every show they claim to love by saying, well, it gets good in season 3. Shows can't do that anymore. They can't ride the coattails of a poor time slot and stay alive. They ride or die immediately. And I think Rings of Power rode. This Amazon show is going to have to be a culture shift for fans coming from the books, because just look at the wonder in the viewers' eyes who are new to Tolkien. Welcome, new viewers. Happy to have you in the tent. I'm so glad you loved it too. The book fans, myself included, have to come to terms with the fact that the meat is there. The second and early Third Age bullets we remember fondly are all there. They look and sound different, they're a little jumbled around, and they work together in new ways, but they are there. So that's my speech. The show is launched. Let's hit the story highlights for Rings of Power Episode 1 and get right into it. We open in Valinor. I'm at the edge of my seat. We have a Galadriel prologue. Very fitting, given Galadriel initially introduced fans to the Tolkien universe on the big screen 20 years ago. The first glimpse of elves we see are children, and then we meet Finrod Felagund in the flesh. Fans probably weren't expecting this. I don't know how they can use that name, but I'm guessing her familial connection to him is mentioned somewhere in the Rings trilogy, and that's how they got it in. Because I was for damn sure dead wrong about what this prologue was going to give us. They did the almost 400-page Silmarillion in exactly 3.5 minutes, 12 sentences, I said in my last episode that I thought they were going to find a way to pull in a really robust prologue for us and find a way around that whole rights thing. But the showrunners went, no, we never said we would do that. And we literally can't, and we told you that. So, from the bottom of my heart, I want to apologize for having had that kind of optimism in the year 2022. That's on me. And anyway, who needs a prologue when they don't even have the rights to the timeline we expected? Welcome to the show where the characters are mostly made up and the timeline doesn't matter. As soon as you let this go, you'll sleep better. I let it go at approximately 5 a.m. this morning, finally, and I'm feeling much better. So what does one put in such a tiny prologue, the world's tiniest prologue? Let's break it down. We saw the 2 trees of Valinor, which lit the earth before the sun and the moon were created. Gorgeous. We saw elves there in their beautiful city, and we hear that Morgoth darkened it and spoiled the land. Elves fought back, maybe with some help from mystery gods that Amazon can't mention. Then the elves left Valinor? Question mark? En masse, all of them, with very little kinslaying. No giant spiders, no highly emotional crossings, or betrayals, or founding of cities, or digging of Nargothrond, whatever. They just left. They all left Valinor together. That's all we get. They left. They went out for cigarettes. So we're in Middle-earth now, and it is not going well. There's dragons fighting eagles, elves fighting orcs, human sacrifice, cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. Skip ahead 800 years, and much of the continent has been rent asunder. I just love that chilling shot of a whole city with the warrior corpses underwater with the fiery red sky. They're showing us the War of Wrath and its consequences of breaking the continent without telling us about it, because they literally can't. Legally, they can't, I'm sure. And I was fine with that. The visuals were perfect. I appreciate that we saw anything at all in this prologue, quite frankly. At the end of the prologue, we learn that Finrod dies by Sauron's hand, and I'll roll with it because Sauron was sort of kind of involved in Finrod's death in the first stage. Sauron was in the building. They don't have rights to Finrod's story, but they know he's hella dead, so they can't use him in the show either, so they kill him off in a new way. I get it. It's legal means to an end. But I'm saying it's these exact kinds of death by 1,000 little cuts to the Silmarillion that's going to make things harder on the showrunners to launch this. This is what leads to Finrod sluts launching YouTube channels to harp on the butchering of Finrod's story and the erasure of his contributions. I'm personally not invested enough in Finrod to care about this crossover, but for the cult of Finrod, I'm just saying, the Amazon people make these beds, so they have to lie in them. I'm not defending showrunners Patrick McKay and JD Payne in the YouTube comments when the Finrod sluts come for them. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about Finrod Felagund, because he's fucking dead, so let's move on. Cue Galadriel's new quest to snuff out the remaining evils of Morgoth's stranglehold over Middle-earth, which chiefly consists of Sauron and lots of orcs and other little evil critters. This icy waste we see is stunningly beautiful. Everything about this ice climbing sequence is stunning. There's no other word for it. The lightweight elf armor, the ice pick boots, the sunset, the mountains. It brought me back to that first moment in the theater at the start of The Two Towers, which was the second film made for the Middle-earth universe about 20 years ago. That, too, opened with a gorgeous snowy mountain cap vista. So Galadriel's continued pursuit of Sauron, at least a few hundred years beyond his last sighting, is not very popular amongst her people's leadership, and certainly not popular amongst her tired, cold, hangry company who mutiny to go home to what is that city? The elfin city of Lindon. Even though they found the first sign of Sauron that's been spotted for a long-ass time at this abandoned stronghold in the frozen wastelands. They made real progress, or so Galadriel thinks. Others back in Lindon don't seem to agree, including the High King of the Elves, Gil-galad, who sends her and her company off to the retirement home across the sea as a quote-unquote reward. Her bandmates are gleeful about this, but Galadriel sees it for what it is, as banishment. Also, back in Lindon, I felt like the writers were trying to establish that there's a friendship between Elrond and Galadriel, and they're trying to make Galadriel so focused on Sauron that she skirts his attempts at casual conversation, but I felt like they missed the mark and made her just a shitty friend and totally uninterested in Elrond's lowly existence. Like, oh, why are you trying to talk to me? I didn't see why Elrond wanted to be friends with her so badly. She didn't even drink the glass of wine he walked so awkwardly across the forest to give her. That was her greatest sin this episode. Those cups were too big for his little goblin hands, but he brought them all the way to the mausoleum for her. She could have taken a sip. That's all I'm saying. The Harfoots. I said in my first episode that I was worried they'd take precious time away from the stuff I really wanted to see. And I don't not still feel that way, but I'm coming around because they're so charming and Smurf-like, and Gargamel's gonna take all our blackberries. And maybe they're more like Keebler elves. I don't know, but it's a pretty great existence that they live. The scuttling around innocence adds some rare, and I think what'll be much needed mirth to the season, especially given the arrival of a certain asteroid that makes me all the more interested in this part of the world. And they eat escargot with passion and zeal, the zeal it deserves. So the Harfoots are okay in my book right now. And in other realms of Middle-earth, we have the Southlands on the map for the season. What an interesting location on the map. Did you notice the particular mountain ranges as we panned south and eastward? Very interesting location indeed. Here, we meet some disgruntled humans whose ancestors fought for Morgoth. Many tribes of men, especially in the south and the east, were successfully seduced by Morgoth in the First Age, while the elves built powerful cities in the west, along the shore closest to their elfin home. The elves are suspicious given this history and are watchful over these people, and they clearly still think of them as needing monitoring, lest they confederate and rise again. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure there's plenty of macaroon shops and kale farms in the South, but the elves are not having it. They don't trust the South not to roll back key Supreme Court decisions, so they established a watchtower and maintain a small UN peacekeeping force down there. How beautiful the elf watchtower over those rolling emerald hills are. Was this New Zealand, or was this the part of the production that got moved to Ireland? I honestly can't tell because both countries are heaven on earth. It's also incredible to see just how beautiful this land was thousands of years prior to the activities of the Lord of the Rings. Like I said, this is a very important mountain range and valley. It was chosen as a setting for us for very good reasons, and the contrast is just stunning. And it's here that we meet some other new characters. Arondir. I keep calling him Arondir, but in the show it sounded like they were saying Arondir. So I'm just going to roll with whatever sounds right, because Arondir, I'm not going to be able to say that. So Arondir and his sarcastic friend, who observes that Arondir is quite taken with a human woman in the town. Since he's been stationed at the Southlands Watchtower for 79 years, I imagine he knew Bronwyn as a child and watched her grow up and go through puberty, become the woman he's now infatuated with. I'm not thrilled to be thinking about that timeline, I'll be honest. So I won't. Now, I said last episode that the actor playing Arondir, Ishmael Cordova, was the most elvish of all the elf actors. Having seen them all now in action, I still hold that's true. His cheekbones and brow line, I mean, he has that whole serious, troubled outpost ranger thing going on. And he does that thing with his mouth where it looks like he's holding handkerchiefs inside both his cheeks while pursing his lips. It's like he killed Orlando Bloom, took his skull, cleaned it off like the Predators do in the Predator franchise, with that cleaning gun, somehow improved the skull, and then filled in new skin with cake fondant. Yeah, I know, I'm terrifying. Speaking of Orlando Bloom, I also get the sense that while we're copying and recasting tropes from the first movie trilogy, I think Arondir is clearly supposed to be the Legolas replacement. That the hot elf without much to say and without much of a personality except killing orcs. And so far, he's carrying out this duty quite well. Very serious, very hunt-oriented. And with Aragorn and Arwen out of the picture, he's filling in the forbidden love requirement as well. Arondir is pulling double duty on the Peter Jackson bingo card, and doing it all with panache, while also getting yelled at by fans on every comment thread just for existing. I tell you, Arondir is out here working twice as hard for half the credits in this show. I swear to God, if the Hall-brand Viggo Mortensen knockoff motherfucker comes out of this show more famous than Morpeth Clark and Ishmael Cordova, I'm gonna be livid. Do I care about Bronwyn's annoying son Theo? No, I don't. Moving on. There's a rumor about poison sickness in the fields, and there's seeping, eldritch cow waste. So the evil that Galadriel's been searching for up in the frozen waste, turns out she was a few hundred years behind Sauron's trail, and he has long since given up the cold and headed south to Florida, where all evil lives. And let's talk about everyone's favorite forger. Celebrimbor is introduced this episode. I should be very excited about this. And yet, he looks like a smug soccer coach, a rusty old butler, a banker who has to maintain 100 feet distance from schools. He's got more forehead wrinkles and crow's feet than an orc. This man is middle-aged, and I say that being middle-aged myself, so don't at me. Galadriel is supposed to be older than him, and not by a little, older by a lot. Make it make sense. And to throw salt in the wound, Celebrimbor is wearing the worst costume I have ever seen in my life. I'm letting a lot slide on episode 1. I really am. I'm super open to just about everything that's been presented. But Barbecue Brimbor, I cannot abide. Have you ever seen unattractive, non-muscly Celebrimbor fan art? No, you haven't, because it doesn't exist. I know. I've looked at all of it. The fans get it. They understand the assignment. Celebrimbor is an absolute unit, a tragic craftsman and leader for the ages, the cautionary tale of hubris, a reimagined Fëanor-type figure for the Second Age's mythology. The showrunners are just fucking with me, because they think it's funny. What if Celebrimbor reminded everyone of that one uncle that no one invites to parties? Glorfindoll will be so mad. But he's such a good actor. I'm sure he is. Everyone on this show is. It's a $1 billion show. This ain't community theater. But I'm supposed to imagine this Victorian-era mortician-looking guy to be the expert craftsman who changes the world? With what triceps is he forging anything, may I ask? And then the episode closes with Galadriel leaping from her company's reward passage into the sea, paired with the arrival of an asteroid carrying a most mysterious passenger, simply referred to in credits as the Stranger. Even his theme on the soundtrack is titled The Stranger. I know what's coming with The Stranger, and I cringed a lot when I figured this out in the trailers. But I'm going to roll with it and wait for it to win me over, because I think the stranger ultimately will win me over. So I'm pro stranger at the moment, although I've had months to drink my wine and come to terms with the fact that they're doing this. More on the stranger next episode, because while we do talk lore on the Fanmarillion, it's lore that supports and enhances the story, not spoils it. We'll talk all about the stranger and where Galadriel goes from here on the next episode of the Fanmarillion. Let's start closing this down with the trivia segment. Arondir's friend mentioned that there had only been 2 known elf and human marriages in all of history. Remember, this is a prequel to The Lord of the Rings. So by the time you Lord of the Rings fans meet Aragorn and Arwen, they're only the 3rd elf and human couple in history. So the question is, who were these first 2 couples? Can you name them? The first is Beren and Luthien. They're quite popular. Aragorn sings a famous song about them in the wilderness in the extended edition of the Fellowship of the Ring, and briefly describes their fate to Frodo during that same scene. The second and lesser-known couple is Tuor and Idril Celebrimbor of the ancient stronghold of the elves known as Gondolin. Gondolin was a city in a deep vale so secret that anyone who goes there wasn't ever allowed to leave. That led to lots of drama, as you might imagine. Add in our third and best-known interracial couple, Aragorn and Arwen, and you might notice a trend. All 3 couples are a human man and an elf woman. So the Rings of Power forbidden romance puts a fun spin on it by being the first to go the other direction. An elf male and human woman. And now for our vocab segment. We met Elrond in this episode. Yay! Elrond was a character made famous by the Lord of the Rings trilogy, played by the impeccably odd, yet otherworldly in his charisma, the one and only Hugo Weaving. After his time in Lindon, Elrond will go on to establish a city of his own in a deep valley. Fans know this city as the colloquial Rivendell, but its elven name is Imladris. So the vocab word for this episode is Imladris. Its language is Sindarin, which is the common elf tongue of Middle-earth. It's not so fancy, and in fact, by this time, the fancy Quenya language of the High Elves from Valinor is considered very gauche to use. Imladris means a deep valley or ravine, which simply describes where it's located. Lame for someone supposedly so skilled at wordsmithing that he serves as the king's herald. But I guess practical in that it helps travelers find it. Where are we meeting? How about 3 days hence at Deep Ravine? Oh yeah, Deep Ravine. I'll be there. I'm Glorfindoll, and this was my show. I welcome your opinion, but remember, I'm not the fandom, just a fan. Join the conversation at Fanmarillion on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Or for flaming that's too spicy for socials, send me an email at fanmarillion@gmail.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
This has been an Opus Nox Media production. Produced and edited by Ali Bachman. For more information on Opus Nox Media, please visit opusnoxmedia.com.